Podcast.
Hello.
Hello.
Yo, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, thanks. How are you doing? Let me turn that up. Yo,
Long
your
time.
your hair's looking wild. You're here.
Got in the shower at 2 p.m. Corona line.
Yeah, I enjoyed the blue though. Blue view top.
And it's a new sample.
Oh, really? Yo, let me hold that. Cool. How have you been though?
I've been good. Yeah, we haven't
Yeah.
chatted for a few weeks, but I mean, pretty much since the last time we spoke,
Yeah,
we moved into our new space.
I saw.
So that's been really nice. Obviously, prior to that, for context, we were working from our garage for various
Yeah,
reasons.
yeah,
So having a space again has been so good.
yeah.
Um,
The space
yeah,
suits you guys. The space is sick.
thanks. It is. It's so weird because normally when you move into a new space, you want to celebrate with like even your like close friends and show them a new space.
Yeah,
Like 4 or 5 people have been.
yeah.
But yeah, that time will come.
Cool, cool. I'm like, I don't know, like, cause I'm always following from afar. Firstly, so let's start over there. So when I saw the space, I saw the shade of blue, and it actually reminded me, like, I have a full, like, I shot like one of my friends, like a picture of them. I'm on film outside of your guys' place. So when I
No
saw,
way.
yeah, I'm gonna send you the picture. I promise. It's actually on my Instagram. So when I saw it there, I was like, wow, crazy.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I think maybe to start off, first of all, like thank you for agreeing and freeing up your time.
I mean, I'm so excited talking. Talking with you is
Yeah,
the best. This is the
really,
first time we recorded talking, but normally we talk for like an hour or two.
exactly. Yeah, and
And
that's why I wanted to like have you like as like the first guest on this podcast. Or maybe to like that actually works very well to segue into maybe introducing it a bit. So the Front Row Media podcast is just literally me like recording conversations I'm having with people who I feel as if are local pioneers in the fashion industry, people who are like change makers, people who are I feel as if are the future, who interest me, and who are just doing like some super cool stuff. And I think yeah. So that's a massive compliment to you, by the way, because that's essentially how I see Art Club and Friends and what you do. And I think maybe to anyone who maybe doesn't know what you do, who's interacting with you for the first time, how would you maybe like describe yourself? If maybe you'd like introduce yourself, maybe who you are, what you do,
okay,
and yeah, where you from.
okay. So my name's Robyn Kaiser,
Mm-hmm.
and amongst other things, I've founded a local brand called Artclub and Friends. Um, when I started it, I was 22, and I really thought I had enough money saved to start a business, so I launched it at the end of 2016.
Mm.
And I think the thing I was the most inspired by then was creating clothes that weren't categorized by a gender. And it's funny because at the time when I started doing that, people were like, why would you do that? That's really risky. Like, that's so complicated. And now it's almost like, it's so cool to see how quickly that's like kind of expected, I feel.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's kind of that's part of why I started. But I think the older I get, the more I come to understand why I think I was making decisions then that I'm only really understanding now about
Yeah,
maybe just my brand story and brand voice.
yeah.
And yeah, I think every time someone asks me what I do, I say something slightly different, which is kind of cool
That's
because it means
me.
that it's
Yeah,
growing and evolving. Yeah.
exactly. And I don't know, like I really think that's cool because I don't believe in the whole point of like boxing yourself into something. I don't
Mm.
believe like if I wake up today, for example, and I really like want to shoot, I can say I'm a photographer. If I wake up tomorrow, for example, and let's say I know how to make clothes, then like I can say that, I make clothes. There's like really like no need to. I think older people like boxing stuff into things. Yeah.
So,
But
and I think as creatives, for some other
yeah.
reason, we even in fashion, people, it drives me mad. People try and
Mm,
box our brand into
Yeah.
streetwear, or say it's gender neutral, and
Yeah.
sometimes I even fall into the trap of doing that to myself.
Yeah.
But I think if that's at the core of your business, it's quite cool because it always keeps what your work is like stemming from authentic.
Yeah.
It kind of like holds you to that.
Definitely. And
Yeah.
I think and this is like, I think this, I'll use this like interview as well for me to also learn a lot of things which I've always wanted to know about you that like I have no fucking clue. And I think the first one would be like how you actually got into fashion. Like there's always that moment. I know for me it was like super late. Like it was when I was in university, I think. When I, like, but when I thrifted my first like jacket, I think, like the tassels at the back, I was like, that's how I got into fashion, my gateway. For you, like, when was that? Like,
also, I don't even know if it's happened yet. I feel like I've recently realized I suffer from like extreme like imposter syndrome. Even now, owning a clothing brand that's like survived a pandemic, I still struggle to call myself an entrepreneur. I struggle to call myself a designer. I struggle to say like I'm a fashion designer. I always giggle before I use that word.
I know, yeah. I think that's just because you're hard on yourself, though. I think because I think it's definitely because you're hard on yourself. Because I think you're all of those things, possibly more.
So the honest truth is how I got into fashion is it was I knew I was living in Johannesburg at the time.
Yeah.
And I was deciding between becoming a social worker and studying fashion design.
I mean, I see how you could get the two. I see how you get the two confused.
Yeah. Then, I don't know, something about fashion just like I felt so scared of it, and for some other reason that's what I chose.
Yeah.
And I think it's been like a love-hate relationship every day. But yeah, every time I think of quitting, I'm like, there's literally nothing else that'll get me out of bed in the morning. Like this for some other reason. I feel like it picked me. I don't know. That sounds weird.
Because it did. No, it did. It did. And I'm telling you right now, like, well, and me not being in like the fashion industry fully right now, and me trying to transition towards it, like you being able to just do something which you're able to get out of bed each and every day for, like that's enough. Like, and I feel as if 90% of people don't have that, and I think it's super cool when like you see people who do, because that's what to aspire towards. Yeah.
I mean, not every day.
We can stay in bed for some days. We can stay in bed for some days.
After lockdown, I realized like people would often ask me like, where am I going? And I would say like, I've got to go work. And then during lockdown, suddenly you couldn't just go to work. And it was the first time I ever wasn't afforded that opportunity. And I was like, what would I do all day long if I couldn't go to this place and work on this thing? And now I'm far more grateful for what I do than before. 100%. It's pretty unreal.
Yeah, it's good to hear. And
yeah,
I think then, like, and probably this is like the one thing which I've wanted to ask you the most, and I think I probably wanted to ask you before we did like my thesis together, which we'll speak like a bit about later on, but like fashion school, like how did you like find fashion school? Like I'm at Fedisa right now, and you at Fedisa, of course, and you did fashion design, which is at Fedisa. So how did you essentially like find the whole experience? Because I know like whoever's like listening to this, a couple of people are like fashion students. So
so I mean, I think it's so different for every kid that goes to any of ththese institutions, because you're all there for slightly different reasons. Like there were a lot of people that studied with me. Sorry, words. And they kind of knew they wanted to go into buying, or they wanted to go into merchandising. And I think for them, their studying career or journey was maybe quite different to mine. I think I was always really interested in maybe non-practical pieces and avant-garde pieces, and for a long time I was really interested in like costume design. That was something I was I loved history of fashion because we got to like create things from different eras, and that was really cool. But I think for me, I needed to go to a really tough school, which I think
It's
Fidisa
definitely a tough
is.
school.
Like they tell you, like
Definitely
don't come here if you want to have like a very calm. Like it's hard work.
It's hard work, yeah.
But I must say, I learned how to stick to a deadline there, and that was a really long, painful experience for me because, like most creative people, you never really finish.
Yeah.
That was brutal. But I must say, like, I think I'm so glad I went through that growth period at school, so that by the time I started my business, I'd already learned, you know, if I need to work all night to get something done, like I'd already
that's what
been
needs to be done.
So that was helpful, but I do think the tricky thing with, and this isn't even about the school I studied with, I've spoken to people who've studied at many creative schools and like across the country.
Yeah.
I think what the skills we need aren't getting like implemented into schools fast enough. So like I had a lot of anxiety about my knowledge on just how to run a business when I left school. Like I didn't really, I'm very like open and transparent about this because my journey is a series of trial and error. Like
I think as most journeys are, because mine is definitely the same.
And you have to start, right? But I think I wish there was like maybe even I don't even know if it can happen at varsity. Maybe it has to happen after. But like I told you, I watched that podcast the other day where someone was saying like, I just want to remind the African designers that you're competing against people in other countries who they graduate, they go into business
incubators and stuff like that.
Incubators, yeah, exactly. They get training, they get support, they get funding.
Which they do.
Not all of them. I'm not saying it's easy, but I don't know anyone here that was able to get funding like in the beginning phases of their business. So
it's self-funded shit here. Like if we're being quite frank, and I think that's like another reason why I started this podcast is I had an idea before I entered like the industry through Fidisa. And I was writing a lot about local culture and local fashion culture, and being a freelance writer, I kind of knew the whole freelance gig type vibe and how that works. But like I'd never really spoken to designers. I never really understood like what the story of a designer is, like where it begins, where it ends. And when I heard that all of the shit is like self-funded, I was like, what? Like, I was like, it's crazy. Like you have to literally like pick out of your pocket to make your own collection, your first collection. And in most other industries, like that's not the case. Like there is some form of like of funding. What were you thinking?
Well, I think those kind of conditions, like in trying to build a business, often obviously lead in really capable, brilliant people not being able to either grow or sustain themselves and trying to grow the business, and then they don't close necessarily because the concept wasn't strong enough or they didn't have the capacity to take it further. They closed because they didn't have the resources. But I think under the circumstances, if you're able to somehow figure it out, you're forced to be really industrious and make things out of very little. And that for me is probably why a lot of people are so interested in South African designers, because there's so many. I'm grateful to be surrounded by these people. Like there's so many South African designers right now.
You're one of them. Like you're definitely one of them. And there's like But
my point is like I think instead of complaining about not having funding, I think we're all starting to learn that we can actually probably reach out more than we do to all of the incredible support systems we do have around us. I feel super lucky that I've just like gone from mentor to mentor in very unofficial ways that have just given me so much knowledge. I think that's probably the thing I'm the most grateful for in my journey, is just the amount of people that have been like, hey, I love what you do, here's an idea, or here's a leg up, or here's a resource, or here's a connection. And that is actually what keeps you going and like South Africa as a business is like your community, which obviously we've
Have
talked about quite a lot.
exactly, have fostered it, like, and when we speak about community, like, which is like for me like a very like interesting word, you've built a very, very strong like community around your brand. And you mentioned like mentors, and I wanted to also maybe quickly touch on that. And I wanted to maybe touch on like your relationship with B Diamond, and you working under her. And I don't know, like, I'm a fan. I'm such a fan that I follow on social media sometimes. But I saw when she was wearing like the tech bag in one of her shoots. So I'm assuming she probably linked up or said something. So I want you to maybe speak about like you when you started off maybe assisting her, and your guys' relationship like now.
So my first, I would say, like official job outside of the industry, I went to go and, well, I first actually interviewed at Woolworths, and I don't know, I think I purposefully tanked the interview.
I'm glad you did, because I think you're gonna hate it. I'm so glad.
I'm not the person that love working with, but I don't know. And anyways, I emailed B. I must have emailed her like probably like 8 times, and she was super busy. And I did not get hunted by B. She really kindly was like, "You are so persistent. Okay, fine, come. Like, I'll make a space for you."
I mean, that's how it is, though. That's the reality.
Really knew nothing. I was just like super energetic and like willing to learn. And I think those, especially the first few months, we worked on some really amazing jobs and some really horrible jobs. And I think like it gave me very quick insights into what I'm up against in the industry, and what a lot of my like friends and contemporaries are up against. And she taught me a lot about just, I guess, just knowing your worth in a creative space. And like, I think those kind of mentors are incredible, and also just like creating a very safe space for you to create and try new things, and like if you mess up, to be held and just be like, okay,
that's super important. That's massive.
And that creates like it breaks that cycle of, there's like a long-standing cycle, I think, of assistants being like taken advantage of, and that wasn't my experience with any of. I worked for Robyn as well. I shared a space with Crystal Birch. Like the list of incredible people I've gotten to like watch, that I think is so important. And that's why, like, even though I don't consider myself at the point at which I can really teach, because I'm still learning so much, if someone gets in touch and expresses like an interest and says, I'm doing this thing, I need some help, I always try and find, like, I just try and pass on as much knowledge as possible.
And I mean, I think, and I'm like a definite like example, I think, of that, you know. And
vice versa, you've asked me some really hard questions.
You keep saying that. I'm like, I don't know what I've taught you, ma'am. I was like, I don't know what I've taught you, ma'am. Like, I needed to do a thesis, and like I had an idea, and let's actually maybe speak about that like now, and maybe also touch on like I want to ask where you are like right now with COVID and everything, but you moving to your new space, right? How did that come about? Like, what did that come on the back of? And
so for I don't really understand, just for like, you know, no bad blood, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but long story short, I didn't really understand how to leave a contract, or if I could. I landed up, like many businesses, with a rental lease. I used to share it with a few other people, and
I also don't know how to read a contract, by the way. Like, I kind of just signed, to be quite honest with you, and then someone explains it off.
Don't do it anyways. But it just, it's basically just like the outcome of a pandemic. Like, things are going to go wrong. And it ended up costing me a lot of money. And I'm 26. I didn't understand. People asked me what my like contingency plan was, and I was like, okay, hold on. Like, I
also don't know how to answer that question. Like Bro,
what was
what
it
do
like?
you?
What's your backup plan for like in case you couldn't do business? I was like, that was never a possibility. Anyways,
Yeah.
so that was really hectic, but it came in the same month. Funny, like
Mm.
we obviously had like 1 or 2 really bad months during lockdown, but then I think
Yeah.
maybe just through everyone shifting more to supporting local, we actually had a really good month. We had our best month we've ever had in the same month that we
Yeah.
got hit a massive bill that like was keeping me
Mm.
up every night.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been quite a uncomfortable year and a really hard year and lots of big lessons being learned. But in the same light,
Mm.
there's like so many really exciting things have happened. Like we've just hired a new team member.
Whoa, is this like
Yeah,
exclusive news or like am I just late to find out?
no, I just social media is I suffer from like pretty bad anxiety, and when I go through
Yeah.
anxious periods, I sometimes like shy away from social media, and I always feel like if I'm not feeling good, I struggle to like be like,
Yeah.
hey guys,
Same.
everything's not Artclub and friends, and like
Same.
I try and like when I'm in a good mood, share good news. Like that's
Yeah,
the
I get
thing.
what
So
you're saying. I get what
I'm
you're
in
saying.
having a good day, and so I'll share good news. So her name's Khalima, and she's a really, really, really incredible and just knowledgeable
Yeah.
pattern maker. She has worked, she's been in the industry for, I think, about 25 years, I would say.
Mm.
And she's worked at Mad Dog, she's worked with big designers, she's worked in swimwear, she's worked in sportswear. She's just like the
Wow.
most phenomenal person to meet at this point
Wow.
in our journey. So she's just joined us, and she's working with us full time on
You're full time.
patterns, new shapes. We're starting to do custom pieces for like whoever needs.
Yeah.
That's also pretty new, so we're not really like launching it yet. We're trialing it out.
Yeah.
But it's just been so incredible because I've got someone to work with. Because usually when you work through a CMT, you go and drop off and you brief and then you leave and then you come back 3 or
Yeah.
4 days later. So
Yeah.
it's not nearly as like intimate of a creative process. So
And maybe to like,
yeah, that's really
and
cool.
maybe to like first of all, like I think it's so like good to hear. Like if we actually summarize, it's so good to hear because I'm always a person who believes in the natural order of things, and I always believe that good things end up prevailing at the end of the day. So like exactly. So from where everything was and how you maintain your positivity, and now you're hiring someone. This is not like just like off the back type of stuff. This is full time. Someone with
Mm,
experience as well, and you're
yes.
venturing into new spaces and new things. Like that's shout out. That's big.
Yeah. It's a huge responsibility. Like I think
Yeah, you're hiring
um,
someone now. Like,
especially if you're like
mm,
an empath or a people's person, you realize like they're going to spend 5 out of 7 days here.
yeah,
You have to make it worth it.
mm,
And like just the knowledge that she shared with us already in like the last 3 weeks has been amazing. And then I think for her, just working in a team with 2 young women,
yeah,
I think it's a very different experience to her. She's often had much older managers or bosses, whatever. So
yeah.
for
It's a
her,
corporate
she said it's the
structure.
first time where
Mm,
she's been given a lot of room to be creative and have insights and just be a integral part of all the
yeah,
decision making. So yeah, I think she's really excited too, and
yeah,
she's got so much knowledge around the industry and what's worked and what's changed. And
mm,
we actually had a meeting yesterday, our first like company meeting, and something really interesting she said to me is that the thing that's changed for her the most in the industry is that companies have stopped investing in skills and teaching and upskilling their staff, especially in factories. And
yeah.
then they say like it's not productive enough or people aren't working fast enough, but they're not actually investing them money and
Mm,
time in like uplifting their
yeah.
people. So yeah, that's what we're going to try and do.
I think that's for me. It's positive signs, and I feel as if like if I've always said to you, and I've always used the word gatekeeper, and you've always given me this weird, like, eyebrowish look when I say gatekeeper, but like,
why? Because I feel like gatekeeping is for me, like, it's like
the negative connotation of it.
They decide whether you can come in or not. Whereas I feel like maybe
Open.
I would like to be a like, I'd rather be a trampoline. If you could I just want to like bounce people up, you know.
The trampoline, as the trampoline of the industry.
Like, that's the idea. Just like
exactly. Like, I honestly feel as if the best way to like make some form of change is to actually be like a part of it. So to hire people to pump more money into it. And it's weird because I was actually looking at like certain stats and stuff. I was doing like some other form of pitch, and it actually, I think it was on the Twig site actually, that like the fashion industry, like SMEs like Artclub and Friends, and you know, Leaf Apparel, and all of them contribute just about like $1 billion to South Africa's GDP. Like that isn't a joke. That isn't like something which is small. And like by hiring more people, you contribute towards that. You're more of the change. And Front Row Media, us just creating this platform and having these conversations, we're attempting to be part of the change as well. Yeah.
Totally. And but I also think like, so my business in terms of it's like, I don't know. I'm obviously only have 2 full-time staff. I don't even consider myself a job creator,
100%.
but I do think we create very different types of jobs that maybe bigger companies offer. I think there's a lot of room to grow in small companies, and I think there's a lot more room to get what you need financially faster in a small company if it's set up correctly.
Yeah.
And it's people orientated. There's so much more you can do that big companies just like
correct.
They're very stuck in different ways of like your employee is a resource and you treat it as a resource, and like that is a big part of why so many people are leaving and trying to join smaller brands.
Definitely. And I think even with us, like with me and because Front Row Media is just me and my 2 friends, my business partners, and I don't foresee that changing like, you know, like anytime soon. And that's just because like I think with smaller like businesses and stuff, you have so much more agency. And for me, when I speak about like the employment bit, I just feel as if like your full supply chain process, right? Like you making the garments and the deliver, like who the people who manufacture and who deliver the garments, and the distributors, and you know, it's like a self-running system.
So this is the other thing. Like when we say like buy local, it's not because yes, environmentally, like if the actual materials made here and all of that, like you cut down on a whole bunch of unnecessary costs, unnecessary waste, etc. But I mean, sorry, I've lost my train of thought. What were you saying?
You were speaking about sustainability, and you know, when we speak about what were we talking about?
Supply chain.
Exactly.
So the other part of that is if you're shopping at H&M, there's like our country misses out on that whole part of the process. So like all of that, the packaging, the growing of the materials, all of that, like that's going somewhere else. It's getting shipped in, bypasses all of those potential jobs. Whereas with our like types of business models, I did one a couple months ago just to like run through the whole process of, let's just say, getting a pair of dungarees to a customer. So we'll obviously start with the cotton, then it gets spun, then the fabric gets woven, it gets washed, it gets cut, it gets sewn, it gets photographed. So that's obviously, again, models, photographer, makeup artist. Then it has to get packaged, and that obviously requires, like, we've got suppliers that create packaging for us, and we've got couriers. It's just like it all feeds into so many other small businesses, and that's what you are paying for when you shop locally. So yeah, that's something to think about.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're having this conversation right now, because I know that people, like, especially like right now when the impact of COVID, are more sensitive and aware to it. But like, I still feel as if sometimes like the way it's being brought across to like larger audiences is still very jargony. So we don't really understand like what people are talking about. So when
Mm-hmm.
we say, hey, listen, when you're buying local, you're not just buying the material, you're kind of like adding something to each and every person within that chain. And that's the whole point of it. Cool. Before, like, I know I'll drag the conversation on forever and ever, and there's super cool two more things that I maybe wanted to speak about to you about. And I think the one is now just your contribution, Art Club and Friends, in terms of South African fashion culture. And I think I can maybe chip in more with this, because when I interacted with your brand, firstly, I was a student in Bloemfontein. And so you can imagine, yeah, you can imagine how far like your reach can be. And I always knew that I wanted to interact with your brand when I came into Cape Town. And I'm not the only person, you know, like there's a strong community that you've built, and like it even resonates to celebrities and, you know, people who are viewed as influential in South African culture. So I saw, so this is me being like a fan again, I saw that you styled Ricky Rick, I think it was AFI last year, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Um, like how do you find interactions like that? Not even just that one specifically, but like people like that. Like I saw Boogie as well came by your studio. Like how do you find that feeling of people who are very important to South Africa's like fashion culture, like coming directly to your brand? And you know what? Yeah,
Um, I think like I said earlier,
yeah,
I'm not sure how I'll ever say thank you to
mm,
the village of people that have at various points in time just like given me a shot.
yeah,
Um, and I wrote down a list the other day of all of the people that when I think of like my heroes, who are there, and
yeah,
how many of them have helped me along the way. Um, yeah, I think I am Art Club and Friends is hopefully going to grow into more than just an offering of clothing.
yeah,
I think I've always wanted to work more and more and in different ways with various artists, because I think that's like the best way to stay in touch with like what your community actually needs and like what's actually going on. Artists are the first people to pick it up.
yeah.
So
I
if
think
that's
COVID
something you,
showed us that. COVID definitely showed us
yeah,
that.
and I think like I don't often talk about the meaning behind it, because I feel like it means something different to different people, but on a lot of my clothing it does say save the artist.
Yeah,
um and I think it's just like to try and remind people to like support the people that inspire them, like whether it's musicians or whether it's fine artists. Like I just bought my first like local piece of art from Lunga. um
oh really?
I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm low key jealous. That's sick though.
Yeah, and like it just, yeah, I think I'm so grateful. And again, like I said, like the concept of paying it forward, like I I can never repay back those people for the opportunities they've given me, but I can find ways to create the same kind of opportunities for other people
Yeah,
trying to create around me. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Well, I don't even think I need to add anything onto that. That kind of just says everything. So moving swiftly along. Um, and not to run the risk of making this too long, I think I just wanted to maybe speak about one more thing. And
Mhm.
for me, it's a large reason as to why this podcast, like that I even want to do and why it exists, is I just saw the struggles of the fashion student when I became the fashion student. And I have strong opinions about this, and I really believe that the future and the solutions lie with local designers, people who are actually in the industry and making sales, and because they're there, right? And
100%. Yeah.
and exactly. So if you would maybe say anything right now to someone who maybe wants to make the next Art Club and Friends, their version of
Mm.
it, or a student who essentially is sizing up these different options, they're being told by fashion institutions and such that they should go into retail and they should go and do an internship there. And on the other side, there's this very pragmatic side of South Africa and the reality we live. and you still need to make, you kind of like need to make sales and just actually live, in
Yeah.
the reality of it. So what would you say, being in a situation like kind of where you are right now, how you would phrase that to someone who is looking at the prospect of either or?
Of kind of like starting a business or going to work with someone else's business. Okay. So
Exactly.
I'm not
like
I'm not
exactly
about
like that.
I'm not about giving false
Mm.
advice.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of being positive. I
Yeah.
think on my journey, I was really young and therefore very courageous. I was like, I can do anything. And I
Yeah.
started a business with, I think, like 6,000 Rand or something. And then I was like, okay, cool. So that wasn't enough. And then I had to go back to the job. And then only like a year later, so like when people ask me when I started Artclub and Friends officially, it was at the end of
Yeah.
2016. If I'm being honest,
Yeah.
I only could really afford to work on it probably a year and a half later, I would say. That's in my mind when I could actually be like, okay, I have a business.
Yeah.
So my advice would be, if you have a really good idea and you feel like the world needs to see it, trust your guts and do your best to make that happen. But I do think that because of the way South Africa is set up, I do think there's so much to learn from other people around you, and there's really no shame in starting out with something secure like a salary. There's no shame in that. A lot of designers are like, I don't need it. You do need, like, we need to eat. And then maybe once you've like learned maybe a little bit about like what type of brand you want to start and like how the industry works, and you have a better insight into what your role would be as a business owner, then I think that's a great time to start a business. And you've also built up, I mean, even working for B and Robyn, I met so many incredible photographers and models and stylists that I still now work with in a different capacity, not as their assistants. They come and source from me. So those relationships were built while I was working, not building Artclub. I was working as an assistant. So I think if you can work your way there through someone else's company, I think that's a good start. Unless you can get funding, you can really like hurt your spirit in trying to do the impossible, because I mean it is really hard to start a business with no funding, and people are doing it around me all the time. It's unreal that people actually do that, like especially in the fashion industry.
It's literally from nothing to something. Like it's literally from like nothing and then to something.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
I think what's amazing, what I've seen through like this year, is there's been a big call for brands to be more transparent in their like activism. And that's not necessarily something that comes naturally to me. I'm not very good with words. I would say I'm like quite like nervous around like speaking. But through this, I've realized how much like activism there is in like just the structure behind local brands, because they have a lot of ability to uplift people, even if it's on a small scale. They can make a big difference. So I encourage it. Like I want there to be more and more Artclub and Friends and versions of it and things completely different. So yeah, I do pass on a lot of that knowledge.
100%.
I can.
Yeah, and I think on my side, like I think that's a super cool way to end it off, and and exactly, we'll stop the recording and then continue. But I honestly feel like, first of all, like thank you for again like agreeing to do this, and
I hope it was helpful.
It was definitely helpful. Like if for myself only, and I'm happy. I'd be content with that also. So yeah, but yeah, and I think in terms of like what you're doing for South African fashion, I'll say it as like a fashion consumer. At the very least, like just keep on doing it. There's a whole community who is behind you, and a whole community which is just waiting to just support. Yeah, because it's off intention, right? It's true intention, and yeah, like let's kind of like just be the change which we kind of like really want to see. And yeah, let's just maybe end it.
Thank you so much. It's been
no
so
worries.
good. Always good to talk to you.
I
I'm also
hope this
very
turns out
excited
good.
to see your journey unfold because you gave me
Yeah,
so much energy during lockdown when I was like in a
yeah.
hole, and I was like, "Who is this person?" You just like phone me, let's talk about the things. So I'm just really excited for you, and I'm really grateful that you're including me in everything that you're doing.
100%, 100%. I'm part of the community, right? I'm on your.
Yeah,
If I'm a subscriber on your newsletter, then I'm part of it. I'm part of it.
we've never met in real life.
No, actually, like I actually met him Zwei the other day, like when I was walking down Long Street. And I just like I was carrying my camera by some chance, and I shot a couple of portraits of him. And then immediately then I was like, you know what? Like lockdown's finished. I should actually go to the old biscuit mall and like just like come there with like a disposable and just say hi with pictures.
Oh,
Okay,
I'll message you now. We'll make plans.
cool.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll chat.
Thank you for everything.
No worries. Cheers, Rob.
Bye.
Front Row Media Podcast.